What's cracking, everyone? My name is Ryan, and today I want to talk to you guys about the Cayin iHA-6. Now, during some of my most recent videos, I've been referencing this headphone amplifier quite often. Now, one of the reasons for that is I did have this on loan from ZMF, but I like this so much, I bought it. So I'm not sending this one back. Instead, I'm going to take some time today to tell you guys all about it. So let's get into it. So the iHA-6, as I'm going to refer to it, retails in at $699. Now you can buy this from ZMF, you can buy this from Audio 46, from Moon Audio, I believe, other retailers out there. It's going to be around that $699 price point. This is not a new amplifier. It's been out for several years, but I do think it's worth giving a full-blown review because this sucker has a lot of power on tap and some pretty unique features that I want to talk about. But first, let's go ahead and talk about what you get inside the box. All right, so inside the box, you're going to get, of course, the amplifier, a power cord. You're going to get an instruction manual as well as a warranty card and a nice set of gloves if you want to practice your miming. Now, this is a honkin' hefty piece of aluminum here, and it is actually about 8 pounds. Now, the human head, I think, weighs 8 pounds, if I remember my days of watching Jerry Maguire. So this is a pretty heavy amplifier, and that is okay by me because it's got some good heft and build quality out of it. It's all aluminum alloy, and it does have a sanded brushed finish to it, which gives it a really nice look that is sometimes hard to pick up on camera, but I just love the aesthetics of this amplifier. So now next, what I'd like to do is talk to you about the technical specifications, but I also want to talk to you about the different features of the amp. So I want to do that together. I think that kind of makes the most sense. So let's get into that now. All right, so going ahead and starting on the back of the amplifier, the first thing you're going to see is, of course, the set of RCA or the set of XLR inputs. Now you can choose one or the other or both, depending on what you want to do there. And then you also have the power input as well. And the fuses, the fuse box for the fuses is right next to the power input. Like I said, you do get the set of spares, which is very nice. Now going around to the front of the amp, things get very interesting here. Now the first thing is the power button. You push that on, you get a nice flashing glow. That is actually the amp warming up. It will mute anything plugged into it, so it will protect your headphones in case, you know, your volume pot, you left it up too high or something like that. Once it's on, you're good to go. Then you're going to see a row of buttons here. Now I'm going to explain each one of these. The top one here is if you're going to be using the SE output or the XLR output. Now, if you have this pushed in, it will light up, and that is going through the SE portion of the inputs on the back and the outputs on the front. If you have it turned off, you're just going balanced. So just note that. Now the next button down is a very interesting feature of this amplifier, and that is the low current and high current button. Now, if it's off, you're going low current of power. If it's pushed in, you're getting a high current of power. Now, one thing I can tell you with current is that plugging things in like planars, they like efficient power, and having high current is actually going to give you a little bit more efficient power going to your planar. So something to note there. And then the last button down here at the bottom is going to be your gain button. Now, if you have it off, of course, there's no gain. If you have it on, you're getting 20 decibels of gain. Holy crap. I mean, that's just a lot of gain for an already powerful amplifier, but more on that. All right, so the next thing you're going to see here then is the different ways to plug in your headphones. Now, these two ports here are very interesting because this is actually a set of left and right independently powered XLR, 3-pin XLR outputs. Now, there's not a lot of headphones these days, or IMs, whatever, that will use this kind of a cable. Now, of course, you can get these custom-made cables if you wanted to do that, but as I said, they're individually powered on left and right channel, which is very unique if you plug those in that way. Otherwise, the left one here, sorry, I'm thinking left and right. My left one here is going to be your low impedance output headphones, single-ended port, so you can plug in a 6.3 single-ended cable here. And then the next one is going to be your high impedance. Now, low impedance is going to output 10 ohms. High impedance is going to output 120. So think about those hard to drive headphones, hard to drive dynamics, the Sennheiser, ZMF things. This is where this amp gets really interesting for you. Now then, furthermore, you get the XLR output, which is going to be 0.3 ohms, but it's going to be the highest power. And to go back to that power, I did skip over that. So the SE outputs here on basically low current is going to give you 2.2 watts of power. That is a ton of power, guys. If you have this on high current, it cuts it in half and brings it to 1.1 watts or 1100 milliwatts, whichever way you want to look at it. And then the XLR on low current is going to be 7 watts of power, and on high current is going to be 5 watts of power. This sucker dishes out the power like it's nobody's business, and that is one thing that I love about this amplifier. So, with all of this said, let's go ahead and talk about some different headphone pairings and, what kind of sound quality you're going to get out of this amplifier. All right, so before I talk about the different headphones and what you're going to get out of this, I will tell you that the overall signature of this, one way I know how to describe it is it's kind of a thicker, just warm but detailed signature, and it almost has a tube-like sound that comes out of it, which is very unique for a solid-state amplifier. I think it's also why this amplifier kind of has two different crowds. Some love this amplifier and some, they're just okay with it, because a lot of people think that the single-ended outputs of this are trash. I completely disagree with that, but I do understand what they're saying. And then the balanced output is excellent. I mean, I think anybody you talk to is going to tell you that it's got, excellent clean power coming out of the balanced. Now, as far as different headphones to pair with this, I do think IEMs are probably not going to be the best thing, just because this thing dishes out so much power that if you have an ultra sensitive IEM, you may just not enjoy that sound. You could probably barely turn the volume pot up. And then I've also heard sometimes, it doesn't have the best noise floor with IEM. So anyways, I'm not saying steer clear of those. I'm just saying note that. But with different headphones, this can really give you different things, good and bad. All right, so I'm going to first of all talk about my easier to drive headphones, such as my Meze 109 Pro, my Focal Radiance, my Meze 99 Classics, and even the Harmonic Dynathena. I tried all of those on this amplifier on the single-ended. I tried them on the low impedance, of course, and just the low current, and that wasn't the most enjoyable experience. I got to be honest. It added a little bit too much of that distortion to them, to where it just didn't give them that musical sound I wanted out of them. However, when I switched it over to the balanced, even though that's a ton of power for those headphones and I didn't have to crank it up that much, the sound that came out of this, it still maintained that mid-range fullness that I talked about, and it just sounded so good. But I will give you some examples. So my Focal Radiance is a closed back headphone, of course, and it doesn't have a big expansive stage to it, being a Focal and being a Radiance. Now, when I had it plugged in to the balance on here, it gave that mid-range, which was already really good with the Radiance, just a little bit more thickness to it. And man, it was just almost like that tube sound of just boom, boom, and just that punch, that slam down below, and just, it was hitting hard. I mean, really hard. And I was loving that sound, but I did find it to be a little bit fatiguing, only because the way this amp kind of, exemplifies the mid-range a little bit. It doesn't do anything to the airiness. It doesn't do anything to that. It doesn't expand the stage. So it almost felt like the closed back of the Radiance was a little more closed in than typically I like to listen to them. And I got some listening fatigue after a little bit. And I'm not saying that it sounded bad, because it actually sounded great, just in short spurts of listening. Now with the Meze 109 Pros and the Harmonic Dynathena, I get a different experience. That stage was a little bit wider for me. It doesn't boost the stage on headphones, I don't believe, but it also, didn't take away from that so much that I still enjoyed the sound of those headphones, but it just gave that mid-range, again, just some fullness and some thickness and just a almost tube-like sound. And I love the sound of that out of the 109 Pros, out of the Harmonic Dynathena. Now I tried even the 99 Classics on this. That's probably a no-go, just because it already has a lot of that going for it down below, and it didn't really add anything to that. So now remember, this is all on the balanced output with the low current. But next, let's talk about harder to drive headphones. All right, so let's talk about, first of all, dynamics. I tried all my ZMFs that I have on hand right now on this amplifier, as well as my Sennheiser HD560S. You know, it's 120 ohms, so harder to drive headphone in that nature as well. What I found that was unique was using even the low gain single-ended output of this amplifier. Again, low current. I didn't do high current with the dynamics. It controlled them a little better because out of that single-ended, you're pushing out 10 ohms. And actually, that was even something that was recommended for me to try. And I really liked that sound. It did give it kind of that tube sound. So, you know, again, that mid-range fullness was there, but it controlled the harder to drive headphones much better to where I didn't feel like it was distortion. It was just a relaxed and pleasing sound. And it was just something I love listening to. And if you don't have a tube on hand, I mean, this almost emulates that just a little bit. And then when I switched over to something like my 560S, even that had a little bit of that tube type sound. Now, what I will say is this doesn't give anything to imaging or anything. So the 560S, which I said already doesn't image the greatest, I feel like because you're adding that fullness to the mid-range even more, and that's already got a great mid-range on that headphone, it kind of made that imaging a little more brought out in the fact that it wasn't spot on, but I felt that was still okay because it was such an engaging low end sound on the mid-range and on the upper bass. Now switching over to Planars, I first tried the Meze Elite and then the ZMF Caldera and my Aeon 2 Noirs. Now what was interesting here was on the low impedance output, but high current, it gave them just more snappiness. And I talked about the Caldera being a snappy headphone. I said that because I was referring to this amplifier. It just gave them, they already had good speed to them, but just gave them, like I said, more snappiness, a little bit more punch. The Noir is already a headphone that I felt is a little bit lacking in that dynamic nature of it, but it added a little bit to that. It also, I felt, tamed that treble just slightly up top on the Noir, to where it was more of a pleasing sound overall without any kind of filters or anything in it. Now the Meze Elite kind of did the same thing. The only thing I would say about the Meze Elite with this amplifier is I didn't feel like it sounded quite as wide, I think because it was giving more to that mid-range. But this is truly like feeling a tube in a way on a planar. And I compared this directly with my Liquid Platinum because the Liquid Platinum is a hybrid tube amp that can work well with planars. And I found those two to be good complements to each other because they don't sound the same by any means, but they're similar in what they do and that they almost give that tube type nature to a planar headphone. And the differences I found between this and the Liquid Platinum actually added a little bit more to the kind of the upper mid-range into the stage of the headphone in a way, and made some headphones of mine sound a little bit wider. Vocal Radiance being one of them, not a planar, but still, hang with me here. And then also the Meze Elite just sounded nice and wide on the Liquid Platinum, but it didn't quite have that low-end snappiness and that low-end mid-range and just thickness that this amplifier gave them. And I thought that was just a very unique experience. Now, of course, I also tried all of those headphones on the balanced, and on the balanced, they sounded fantastic too. Probably a little bit more tighter and a little bit more precise, I would say, than on the single-ended. Like I said, I just felt the single-ended kind of add some distortion, but it was that fun distortion of almost like a tube sound that I really enjoyed out of this amplifier. All right, so to kind of wrap this up, I'm just gonna say that this amplifier is very musical in my opinion, and I do think that there is a place for the single-ended output as well as definitely the balanced output. I don't think this is a amp that is going to be a one-size-fits-all type scenario. So no, I don't think this would be the only one that you would buy. Unless the only headphones that you have are harder to drive headphones, by all means go for it. But I'm saying, like, is this going to play with everything? Probably not, but I am okay with that because I'm at the stage in my own personal journey with this hobby that I'm ready to try different amps and have different things to be able to compare to. And I love this amp, in case you haven't already noticed that. Now, a couple of things I will say negatively, other than, you know, the single-ended and IEMs and things I was talking about there. This also gets pretty hot. Now, it's never been to the point where I felt like it was dangerous or anything like that, but it does get, you know, pretty warm to the touch. But, you know, being all aluminum all the way around, there's no like vents or anything around this. That kind of makes sense. And it's also got a couple of power supplies inside there. So yeah, of course it's going to get a little bit hot. Now, one last thing I want to do before I end this is I want to give you a little bit of an analogy here when it comes to headphone amplifiers. So let's say you're getting ready to cook some steak, right? Now you can take your steak, maybe it's a nice juicy 18-ounce ribeye, and you can throw it in the microwave and you can nuke the shit out of it and bring it out, and it's going to be edible food, right? You can eat it. Or you can take it, throw on your spices, do all the things that you want to do, and slap it on a grill or something else of your choice and cook it properly, as I would like to say, and have a nice juicy steak. Now, besides the fact that I'm hungry, and now you're probably hungry as I've said that, that's kind of how I relate to amplification and power. A lot of amplifiers will power many different headphones, almost all headphones, right? They'll give you sound. But to properly drive a headphone on some, you're going to need better types of power. This, in my opinion, has very efficient power out of it. It's got a lot of juice coming out of it. Yes, I talked about that distortion out of the SE, but out of the balance, you're getting nice clean power, and that this is something with harder to drive headphones sounds excellent. Now, when I compare something like this to my ADI 2 DAC, which is a DAC and amp in one, I do not like the amp on that with some of my harder to drive headphones. I just don't think they sound quite as lively as something like this. So hopefully that helps some of you if you're kind of early on in this journey of amplifiers and trying to understand that. And that's why I think this sucker still has a place today. I don't think it's talked about enough. So this is my due diligence to the Cayin amp, and I am very excited that I now own this one. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If so, please smash that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel because I have more things coming out very soon. I thank you guys for your time watching today. And in the meantime, guys, I will see you in the next one.